Welcome to Shatter.
Help me reach 5,000 subscribers. Support the video with a like and leave your thoughts in the comments. She declared it loud enough for the neighbors to hear. I'm not yours to touch. Don't touch me. The words were sharp, meant to cut, meant to humiliate. She didn't whisper them in a moment of frustration. She stood in the middle of the living room, her chin lifted, her eyes cold, as if she wanted an audience. And in that instant, something inside me shifted. I didn't yell back. I didn't plead, didn't beg, didn't try to soften her edge. I simply looked at her, steady, silent, and let the weight of her declaration hang in the air. Then I answered with words as final as hers. Then you're not mine to keep either. Get out of my house. My voice was calm, almost too calm, and that calmness rattled her more than anger ever could. She blinked, caught off guard. She had expected resistance, a fight, maybe even desperation. What she found was detachment. I had nothing left to prove. Her words had severed whatever tie remained. And in that silence, I realized the truth. She had just freed me without even knowing it. The rest of that night was a blur of movement. She stormed upstairs, slammed doors, muttered curses under her breath. I didn't follow. I stayed in the living room, my phone on the table, my hands folded, staring at the wall. I wasn't thinking about her. I was thinking about the man I had become, patient, accommodating, always the one to bridge the gap, and how all of that had ended with one sentence. Later, I heard her on the phone, her voice hushed but urgent. She was talking to someone, maybe a friend, maybe more. She painted herself as the victim, twisting the story into something easier to swallow. I listened from the hallway, my face blank. It didn't matter who was on the other end. What mattered was that she had already chosen her side, and it wasn't mine. That night, I slept in the guest room, not out of anger, but out of clarity. The bed was stiff, the room quiet, and for the first time in years, I felt a strange kind of peace. She thought her words had wounded me. In reality, they had unchained me. When the morning light broke through the blinds, I had already made my decision. This wasn't about saving what we had. It was about ending it cleanly, silently, with the precision of a man who no longer cared to explain himself. And from that point forward, every move I made would bring me closer to freedom and leave her drowning in the silence she had created. The morning after her declaration, the house felt different. It wasn't mine and hers anymore. It was mine. She moved through the kitchen carefully, glancing at me like she was waiting for an outburst that never came. I sat at the table, sipping my coffee, scrolling through emails, and didn't offer her a word. The silence pressed harder on her than any argument could have. She tried to fill it, muttering about errands, about how the lawn needed mowing, but I didn't respond. My calm was sharper than a knife. I began to pull pieces of myself back, one at a time. My bank accounts were the first step. At lunch that day, I walked into the branch, shifted funds into a private account, and closed a joint card she used without hesitation. The clerk asked if I wanted to notify her. I said no. By the time she reached for that card at Target later, the decline would answer for me. At home, I stopped performing the rituals she had come to expect. I didn't cook dinner, didn't fold laundry, didn't check in with her about the weekend plans. I ate alone, leaving her plate untouched on the counter. She came into the room later, asking why I hadn't waited. I looked at her once, calm, and said I wasn't hungry for waiting anymore. Then I walked away. That night, I took my time. I stayed out late, lifting weights at the gym until my arms burned, stopping at Waffle House on the way home for a meal that was mine alone. By the time I pulled into the driveway, the lights in the house were still on. She was waiting, standing in the doorway with her arms crossed, demanding to know where I'd been. I shrugged, told her simply I was out. Nothing more. The lack of detail hit her harder than any admission could have. As the days passed, she started to notice the missing pieces. The framed photos in the living room, gone. My clothes from the shared closet, moved. The documents she once had easy access to, locked in a safe she didn't have the key to. She didn't confront me directly. Not yet. But I saw the unease growing in her face, the twitch in her jaw when she realized she wasn't in control anymore. I wasn't giving her anger. I wasn't giving her explanations. I was giving her nothing. And nothing was heavier than everything she had thrown at me before. She thought I was punishing her. What she didn't realize was that I was preparing. Quietly. Strategically. Step by step. And by the time she understood what was happening, it would already be too late. The cracks started to show within days. She had always carried herself like she was untouchable, like every room was hers to command. But now, when the silence stretched between us, her confidence began to falter. I watched it carefully, like a man studying a storm from a safe distance. One evening, she tried to bridge the gap with performance. She set the table, laid out dinner like we were still us, even lit a candle she had picked up from Target weeks ago. She poured wine into my glass, smiled faintly, and asked how my day had been. I gave her a short answer, nothing more, and kept eating. The silence that followed was unbearable, for her, not me. She reached for my hand across the table, but I didn't flinch. I just pulled my hand back slowly, without a word. Her face tightened, the smile gone. That was when she realized she couldn't command my attention anymore. The next morning, she tried another tactic. She came downstairs dressed sharper than usual, perfume heavy in the air, makeup flawless. She made sure I noticed before announcing she had plans with friends. Normally, I would have asked who, where, when. I would have played the part of the jealous husband, giving her the validation she craved. Not this time. I just nodded once and went back to tying my shoes. She hesitated at the door, waiting for a reaction that never came, then left with a slam that echoed through the house. When she came back later that night, her mask was thinner. She moved quickly, avoiding my eyes, retreating upstairs without a word. I stayed in the living room, calm, flipping through channels like she wasn't even there. The distance was consuming her, and I didn't have to lift a finger. By the weekend, the unease had turned into something sharper. She lingered by the doorway when I left, asking who I was meeting. I told her simply, people. That one word unsettled her more than any elaborate excuse. She wanted to know details, to have control, but I wasn't giving her the map anymore. She was lost, and I intended to leave her that way. At night, I heard her restless movements, the pacing, the quiet phone calls, the sighs that filled the dark. She was beginning to taste what she had served me for years: rejection, distance, silence. Only now, it wasn't temporary. It was permanent. And she had no idea how much further I was prepared to go. The shift grew sharper when I found the first real sign that confirmed my instincts. She had left her phone on the counter, the screen lit up with a preview of a message. I didn't go digging, didn't scroll, or unlock it. I didn't need to. The tone in those few words told me everything I had suspected. She was reaching outside of us, leaning on someone else for attention. I didn't confront her. That would have given her control, fed her drama. Instead, I closed the phone gently, placed it exactly where it had been, and carried on as if nothing had happened. My calm wasn't ignorance, it was strategy. She thought she was hiding secrets, but what she didn't realize was that I had already stepped far enough away that her secrets didn't touch me anymore. The next day, I started shifting even further. I moved documents from the office into a locked case she couldn't access. I visited the bank again, securing my assets in a separate account. When I came home, I stopped in the garage, cleaning out the truck, making sure everything I needed was already with me. Each move was invisible to her, but deliberate to me. That evening, she tried to bait me into talking. She asked what was wrong, why I seemed distant. I looked at her calmly and said I was just tired. That was it. Her eyes narrowed, searching for cracks, but I gave her nothing. The silence became unbearable for her, but for me, it was clarity. Later that night, I sat in the backyard, staring at the dark sky, and I heard her inside on another call. Her voice was lower this time, urgent, almost panicked. She was telling someone she couldn't figure me out anymore, that I wasn't reacting the way I used to. She said it like it was a problem to solve, a code to crack. But I wasn't a puzzle anymore. I was already gone. She came outside, pretending she hadn't been on the phone, asking if I wanted to come in. I shook my head and stayed under the night sky. She lingered for a while, hoping I would say something, then left with a sigh heavy enough to betray her. In that silence, I realized the balance had completely shifted. She had once rationed affection, believing I would always wait in line for scraps. Now, she was the one waiting, pacing, hoping for my attention, and I had no intention of giving it back. The unraveling didn't stop with her phone calls. The ripples spread outward, touching everything she had carefully built around her. One night, I watched her scroll through Facebook Marketplace, her fingers moving quickly, her eyes darting to me as if checking whether I noticed. She was selling things, jewelry, handbags, little luxuries she had once flaunted proudly. She didn't tell me why, and I didn't ask. But I knew. Something in her other life was crumbling, and she was scrambling for control. I didn't intervene. Instead, I took a step she didn't see coming. The man she leaned on, the one she thought gave her an escape, had his own shadows. A little research had shown me enough. Debts he couldn't hide, lawsuits that stained his record, whispers buried in places most people didn't bother to look. I didn't have to expose him directly. I just let the right pieces fall into the right hands. A document forwarded here, a quiet tip dropped there. Nothing dramatic, nothing traceable. Just enough to light a fuse. Within a week, I saw the pressure hit her. She came home shaken, her voice sharp as she muttered that people were spreading lies about someone she cared about. She defended him with desperation, her words trembling, her eyes avoiding mine. I sat at the table with my coffee, calm, nodding occasionally, never giving away what I knew. The more she tried to shield him, the more obvious it became that she was already drowning with him. The beauty of it was that I didn't have to say a word. I didn't have to accuse, didn't have to confront. She was unraveling on her own, pulled under by choices she had made long before this moment. All I did was step back and let the silence surround her. One evening, she broke down in the kitchen, pacing, muttering that everything was falling apart at once. Her voice cracked as she said she couldn't understand why nothing was working anymore. I stood by the counter, steady, my face unreadable. When she finally asked if I cared, if I was even listening, I told her calmly, "I hear everything." Then I walked away. That single line haunted her more than any argument could, because she knew what I meant. I didn't need her explanations. I had already seen enough, heard enough, understood enough. And my silence told her the truth. She wasn't losing me. She had already lost me. It wasn't just him who crumbled. Slowly, the walls of her social life began to fall too. For years, she had drawn power from her circle, friends who admired her, family who believed her stories, neighbors who saw the perfect version she put on display. But when the mask cracked, people noticed. And they didn't forget. At a brunch with her friends, I sat at the edge of the table, quiet, observing. She told one of her polished stories, her voice high, her gestures exaggerated, as if she could still command attention. But this time, her friends didn't laugh. They shifted in their seats, their smiles fading when they looked at me and saw no reaction. One of them finally asked if everything was all right. She laughed too loudly, brushing it off, but the sound was hollow. I didn't speak. And that silence, again, spoke louder than anything. Later that week, at her parents' house, the same cracks showed. Her mother asked gentle questions about her work. Her father sat in silence, his eyes steady on her. She rambled, layering excuses over excuses, as though speed could hide the emptiness beneath. And then her father leaned forward, his voice low and sharp, and asked if she really thought no one would notice. She froze, her fork halfway to her mouth, searching for me to rescue her. I kept eating, my knife steady against the plate. She was alone, completely, and she felt it. Even neighbors began to catch glimpses. At a weekend barbecue, she reached for my hand, trying to project closeness. I let her hand hover in the air until she pulled it back awkwardly. The couple across from us caught the moment, their conversation pausing. She blushed, laughed nervously, and tried to cover it up, but the damage was done. At home, the pressure boiled over. She grew sharper, her voice rising in frustration. She slammed doors, banged dishes, tried to provoke me into a fight that would give her some control back. I didn't take the bait. I stayed calm, silent, deliberate. The angrier she became, the colder I grew. And soon, the silence spread beyond me. Friends stopped returning her calls. Her sister visited less, her mother's patience thinned, and invitations that once came easily began to dry up. She was isolated, not because I had exposed her, but because her own behavior, her own cracks, had pushed everyone away. I didn't have to move against her. The world was already doing it for me, and she didn't know how to stop the fall. By the time her circle dissolved, she was clinging to me as if I were the last anchor in her life. But I wasn't her anchor anymore. I had become her mirror, reflecting everything she had done back at her with silence and distance. She would linger in doorways, watching me as I read, waiting for me to speak first. When I didn't, she grew restless, pacing the floor like a trapped animal. One night, she broke down completely. I came home late after stopping at Waffle House, and found her sitting on the couch in the dark. The TV was on mute, the glass of wine on the table untouched. She looked up at me, her eyes red, her voice cracked as she whispered, "Do you hate me?" I didn't answer. I set my keys down, walked past her, and went upstairs. That silence was heavier than any words could have been. She tried to rebuild control in small ways. She cooked dinner every night, even meals I never asked for, setting the table as if routine could fix what was broken. I ate without complaint, thanked her once, and walked away. She waited for me to linger, to engage, but I didn't. My calm indifference tore through her more effectively than anger ever could. Soon, she started looking for me in places she hadn't before. She knocked on the guest room door late at night, asking if I would sleep in our bed. I told her I was comfortable where I was. Her voice cracked, but I stayed firm. Each rejection chipped at her pride until there was almost nothing left. By then, even her lover had disappeared. Whoever he was, whatever he had promised, he was gone. The late-night whispers I had once overheard were gone too. She was left with no one to confide in, no one to lean on. Her phone stayed silent now, except for the occasional unanswered text she sent out into the void. She thought silence was a weapon she could use against me. But now she was drowning in it, gasping for any response I refused to give. The same coldness she had once served me, I now served back with precision. She had built a world where I was supposed to chase her, beg for her attention, fight for her affection. Now that world was gone, and I had no intention of stepping back into it. The confrontation came when she couldn't take the silence anymore. It was a Thursday night, the house heavy with tension. I had just come back from the gym, still in my hoodie, sweat drying on my skin. She stood in the kitchen, her arms folded, her voice shaking between anger and desperation. She demanded to know what had happened to me, why I was acting like a stranger, why I was tearing the marriage apart. Her words spilled out fast, one after another, like she thought she could bury me under them. She wanted me to break, to argue, to give her something to fight against. But I didn't. I leaned against the counter, arms crossed, and listened in silence. Every second that I didn't respond made her voice rise higher, her composure cracked deeper. When she saw that her accusations weren't landing, she tried to pivot. Her tone softened, trembling now. She said she still loved me, that we could fix this, that we could go back to how we used to be. She reached for my hand, but I stepped back, calm, deliberate. That small movement broke her more than any words could. I told her quietly, "Some choices can't be undone." The stillness in my voice was colder than shouting, sharper than any insult. She froze, her face pale, her breath shallow. She had expected rage, maybe forgiveness, but she hadn't expected this, indifference. That night, she came into the bedroom late, sitting on the edge of the bed with her shoulders slumped. Her voice cracked as she whispered that she needed me. I turned my head, looked at her, and gave her the faintest smile, one without warmth. I told her, "You need yourself more than you ever needed me." Then I rolled over, leaving her in silence. She stayed there for a long time, staring at my back like she was trying to will me into turning around. But I didn't. Eventually, she lay down too, her body stiff, her breathing uneven. The distance between us wasn't measured in inches anymore. It was final, irreversible. For the first time, she understood the truth. I wasn't punishing her. I wasn't angry. I was already gone. And there was no version of this story where I came back. Her breaking point came in public. She had suggested dinner at Olive Garden, claiming it would be good for us. I knew it wasn't about us. It was about performance. She wanted the world to see that we were still together, still presentable. I agreed without objection, calm as ever. We sat across from each other in the crowded dining room, candles flickering, conversations buzzing around us. She talked too much, laughed too loudly, trying to create an image that no longer existed. I let her speak, nodding occasionally, my face unreadable. But when she realized my silence wasn't temporary, she cracked. Her voice grew louder, sharp with frustration. She demanded to know why I treated her like she didn't exist, asked if I even wanted her anymore. Conversations around us slowed. Strangers turned to look. She noticed their eyes on us and froze for a moment. Her face pale, but then pressed harder, desperate to force me into reacting. I leaned back, calm, my eyes steady on hers, and spoke quietly. "You're asking questions you already know the answers to." My voice was low enough that only she could hear, but the weight of it crushed her more than if I had shouted. She blinked, her lips trembling, the mask slipping in front of everyone. The rest of the dinner was silence. She pushed food around her plate, her appetite gone, her shoulders tight. When we left, she walked a step behind me, her head bowed. For years, she had commanded attention. That night, she walked in shame. At home, she tried to reclaim control with anger. She slammed her purse on the counter, muttered that I was cruel, that I was pushing her into the ground. I didn't argue. I didn't even look at her. I went upstairs, leaving her with her words echoing in the empty kitchen. She stayed there for a long time, pacing, muttering to herself. But she knew what everyone at that restaurant had seen. Her slipping, me steady. Her desperation, my calm. By now, it wasn't about me leaving. It was about me already being gone, even as I stood in the same house. She was unraveling, piece by piece, while I remained untouched, untouchable. And soon, there would be nothing left for me to do but walk out completely. The end came quietly, without a fight, without ceremony. By then, I had already moved everything that mattered into place. The accounts were separated, the documents secured, the new apartment ready. Every step had been deliberate, silent, impossible to trace. She thought she still had time, that her pleas and performances might turn me back. But time had run out long before she realized. That morning, she left early, muttering something about errands. I watched her car pull out of the driveway and disappear down the street. The house fell silent, and I moved quickly. My clothes, my files, the photographs she insisted on framing, all gone within hours. By noon, the space we once shared looked like it had never belonged to me at all. When she came back from Target later, the first thing she noticed was the driveway. My truck wasn't there. Inside, she called my name, her voice rising as she walked through the rooms. The panic in her steps grew louder with each empty drawer, each bare closet, each missing trace of me. On the kitchen counter, I had left a single envelope. Inside, the signed divorce papers and one line written in my hand. I didn't disappear. I just stopped showing up where I wasn't respected. She found it within minutes. I wasn't there to see her face, but I could imagine it. The mix of shock, disbelief, and the crushing weight of understanding. She had tried to hold power over me with silence, with rejection, with control. And in the end, it was my silence that destroyed her. I didn't linger to hear her cries, didn't stay for the aftermath. I was already driving down the highway, the sun setting in front of me, the world opening wide. For the first time in years, I felt free, not because I escaped her, but because I chose to. She thought she had built walls around me, keeping me dependent, keeping me small. What she never realized was that I was holding the key all along. And the moment I used it, I wasn't just gone, I was untouchable. That was the final truth. I didn't lose her. She lost me. And once I was gone, she had nothing left but the silence she had created for herself. Real men don't explode. They exit. Subscribe for more power stories.